All right, welcome into Before Floor, an extension of 5 on the Floor here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at 5 Reasons Sports and at Ethan J. Skolnick. We got Jonathan Romlicon. You can follow him at 3-Piece Combo. Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. And Ricky J. Mark, who you can follow conveniently at Ricky J. Mark. Our producer tonight is Alejandro Villegas, as usual. You can follow him at Alejandro VG32. We are sponsored, as always, by our friends over at Biscayne Bay Brewing. Biscayne Bay Brew, the official beer, 5 Reasons Sports Network, and of the Miami Marlins. Get yourself a Marlins Lager, a Tropical Bay IPA, or any of the other great beers at many local supermarkets in this area, including Whole Foods and Publix. Also, you can get it at restaurants like the one I'm sitting at right now. You can get it at Quarterdeck, where we're having a watch party tonight, kind of a mini watch party. We're going to see how this thing goes. I do believe we have enough, just like the Heat do. So check out Biscayne Bay Brewing and the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, check out our friend Mark Brown, marcbrownpa.com. That's Mark Brown. He will help you with your estate plan. I know maybe you think, okay, I don't have that much, or I'm not that old, or whatever. It doesn't matter, okay? Make sure that you know where your money's going to go if something happens to you. There are unforeseen accidents all the time, okay? And you want to make sure that the right people get what you worked hard for. So reach out to our friend Mark. He's also got a title company right there in-house. They're based in North Lauderdale, just north of Cypress Creek off of Andrews. The phone number is 954-566-5678. That's 954-566-5678. Big Heat fan and a great office. I mean, they really do deal with you in a really respectful way, and they make sure that you get exactly what it is that you want and go back and forth with you until you do. So reach out to Mark again. It's marcbrownpa.com. All right, let's get to it. The Heat play the Celtics tonight. As I mentioned, I'm outside freezing my ass off at Quarterdeck in Davie, but we have a heat lamp. Heat lamp, see? The Heat are playing tonight. We got a heat lamp behind me. The Heat are playing the Celtics tonight. Well, you don't need to go up close, Alejandro. But that's okay. The Heat are playing the Celtics tonight. This is the first time, actually, right? I mean, they've not played each other to this point this season as Greg joins us. Let's get to Brady on this because the story of the game is kind of who's not playing again. I feel like Jimmy Butler's never played for one of our watch parties. Who's in, who's out?
Yeah, so this is one of those games where Spo says they have enough, but I'm just not sure that they do. No Jimmy Butler, as you mentioned. The other big one is no PJ Tucker. And I think both of those guys being out makes a ton of sense. Like 4 games in 5 nights, as guys are mentioning. But it's also the 3 overtimes in that game. Jimmy's usage has been high. PJ basically feels like he plays every night. Like he needs probably a little bit of a longer break than just one game on a back-to-back. But obviously, this is a weird game because I almost think that Yurtseven could be very usable in this type of game if we talk about their front court depth. So people reminded me that he entered the protocol, just a terrible timing in general. But I think the starting lineup, they probably keep Gabe. I think they insert Caleb, and they probably insert Tyler because I was thinking about it. They just don't have enough creation if they go the Strus route. And you look at these other ways they can go, it just doesn't seem like it would work. I think the best possible way is to put those 5 out there. And I think the bench would consist of Max Strus, Dedmon, Kyle Guy, Silva, and Haslam. So it's just a very weird-looking 10-man rotation that they have out there. And I think you're muted.
Jonathan, when you look at the game the other night, it was kind of a double effect, right? You lose the game. I mean, if you get to the third overtime, you want to finish it. They didn't finish it. There was a lot of problems down the stretch again, which is something that we've addressed here many times. And obviously, it was a difficult circumstance, but you want to get the win because you kind of knew that this was going to happen. And it's not just one now. It's 2. You got to play Toronto after this, a team that you don't match up particularly well against. I'm not expecting Lowry to be back for that one. I just want to say one more time, for any Raptors fans, and I saw some of this again on Twitter today, it's not a big contingent, but for any Raptors fans who are saying he's ducking the Raptors or something like that, I just want to say get a life, okay? That's not what this is about. That's not what he's dealing with right now. But this feels like a stretch, like we talked about bumps on the road that they're going to have. This is a significant one here.
Yeah, there's a point in every season where the compounding injuries just seem to add up and be a little too much. And it seems like this is that point of the season for the Heat, right? Jimmy, like you said, having to go through essentially playing that game hurt because he had that non-foul called where the guy went under him. So his ankle was pretty much tweaked. He ended up carrying us, having a 37-point triple-double, and we didn't win that game. So now we're going to be here and we're a little shorthanded. The good thing is other teams are going through the same issue, right? We see that Brooklyn is having the issue with not being fully healthy all the time. We know that other teams are dealing with that as well. So I think Miami is still pretty well equipped for it. I think the key to tonight is going to have to be shooting the hell out of the ball. But it is tough to always be put in that position where you're the underdog, because you just want to come in sometimes and have the players available that you're just better than the other team.
That hasn't happened a lot. Jose, thank you for all of the comments. Let's mix them up a little bit, Alejandro. Just so I get to some, of course, use the super chat. We'll make sure that we read them. But again, no yurt in the protocols. I'm going to go to Greg here in a second. But Ricky, I want to give you a chance to weigh in, because Greg and I and Alex spent about 40 minutes on Bam last night and nothing but Bam. And the timing seems fortuitous for that particular podcast because it's Bam tonight, right? I mean, Bam and Hero, but I mean, he doesn't have his wingman there in Tucker. He doesn't have Jimmy. He doesn't have Lowry. And I just, if it's not going to happen on nights like this, when is it going to happen? That's my question, because all of his offensive metrics are down right now.
Professional basketball, more specifically the National Basketball Association, can be an unforgiving league. The reason I say this is because, yes, Bam is a couple games removed from being out for a little while, but you got to play a certain way to win these games. We're well aware of how Miami has, at least in my view, kind of overachieved, especially considering the types of players that have stepped up their play in the last month, going, I believe it was 14-8 in Bam Adebayo's absence. But look, like you said, I mean, there are a couple key guys that are out. Kyle Lowry is out. Jimmy is probably super exhausted, but even so, he's, you can't expect him to do everything. Like, how many times are you going to expect a 38-point or a 37-point triple-double out of him? Bam needs to step up. That's his job. I know we talked about the contract and how when you sign a contract, that comes with certain responsibilities, but he's supposed to be that third big in the big three. And while I'm not expecting, I just hope those of y'all out there, whether it be in the comments or on Heat Twitter or just in Heat Nation in general, please do not work yourself into a shoot. Please do not work yourself into a lather over, oh, Bam's got to do this tonight or it's all over. Understand that Bam Adebayo is who he is. Don't go in expecting him to get 37, 15, and 5 or whatever. I'm not. I'm just going to watch the game tonight, and if he performs well, great. If not, fine. But look, it is what it is at this point. Clearly big games haven't necessarily brought out the best out of Bam, and we've got enough history to prove that. So we'll see what happens. Who knows?
I disagree. I feel like Bam Adebayo, aside from the Milwaukee series, has not disappointed in big games. I feel like the run in the bubble, he was as good as could be expected. And I know that we've seen little glimpses here, but let's wait until the stakes are a little higher before we bury him as a Jamal Mashburn. Like, I just think that the conversation is heading in that direction. And tonight, like, everyone is fixated on no Jimmy and no PJ. And I understand why. You want to see the team whole. But to me, Tyler Hero went 5 of 22 off the bench in the last game. Bam Adebayo has these question marks. What perfect way to get those guys' confidence rolling and to give them the opportunity for more usage than a situation like this. So I hope they start Tyler. I hope they lean into both of those guys. Maybe I'm just being the positive outlook guy that I tend to be, but I think that, like, these things happen in interesting fashions and guys have stepped up all year. So why should we expect that these guys aren't going to answer the call now?
I think Greg is disagreeing with something that I didn't quite say. I'm not saying that Bam doesn't step up in big games. I'm saying that we have had these moments throughout the season, whenever, where we expect Bam to turn up, and he doesn't necessarily do that. That's what I'm saying. Not that Game 7 he's not going to be there. So I think it's two different things. This is what I mean when I say that, like, tonight, Heat fans are working themselves into a lather. Oh, Bam aggressive, Bam this, Bam that. Yeah. And then when he inevitably doesn't do that, oh, man, Bam's not aggressive. He's such
actually, we are aligned. I agree with you.
All right, let me jump in on a couple of the comments here because people have been asking questions. Number one, Yurt is in the protocols. We mentioned that earlier in the show, but he's not available. So for those of you who are saying bench Bam and play Yurt, first thing, we wouldn't be going there anyway. But second thing, that's not even possible tonight. But beyond that, it's interesting about mentioning Tyler here, Brady, because I feel like he skated a little the other night. because again, Jimmy carried them back into it, but then Jimmy made mistakes down the stretch. But Tyler literally could not make a shot down the stretch, and they did set him up for it. I know the weird thing about him being out at the end of one of with 2 seconds left or whatever, but then he had opportunities afterwards and didn't come through. I almost feel like, as much as I've wanted them to keep him on the bench, that maybe changing the role now is not such a bad thing, to just get him back in the lineup tonight too, from a mental standpoint, and just have him go, right?
Yeah, and I think judging that game, it's almost like picking your poison, because the Bam and the Tyler thing are almost completely opposites. Like, you're talking about Bam not being aggressive, not shooting, and Tyler almost being too aggressive and shooting too much when he's having an off night. So I think it's just preference on what you prioritize in that way. But I do think this could be a big Tyler game, because you're talking about all these guys that are missing. Kyle and Jimmy are two of their bigger playmakers. PJ, when guys go down, when Jimmy specifically goes down, they work things through PJ Tucker. And I know we just said about Bam kind of lowering expectations a bit, but I'm going to do the complete opposite. If I had to predict, I would probably say I think this is like a triple-double game. Like, and the reason I say that, I think they are going to spam Bam Adebayo playmaking in this game. Like, there's no other way they're working things. It's going to be Tyler on the perimeter, and I think it's going to be a bunch of actions with Bam. And I think this, maybe if it's not a triple-double, I think it's just a high playmaking assist game for him. That just seems like the way this is translating. But it would be interesting to see the Tyler Bam pick and roll get going, or a two-man game get going, because when they're the two best players on the floor, I think you just kind of want to see that. And this is another thing I do want to say, is that this Boston team is a weird matchup anyway, because we're talking about the Heat going small. They start Robert Williams and Al Horford. So, like, this is just a very weird matchup. And I think it could benefit Tyler, because if he can just get in the drop coverage that we talk about all the time, and I think the big thing that we're going to talk about, we mentioned him struggling against length. If he gets that mismatch and he can pull out a Horford or pull out a Robert Williams, I think he has to take advantage.
Yeah, and play Prize Picks tonight if you want to. I think I just looked at the assists. I think Bam is 4.5. So that might be a nice play tonight on Prize Picks. Use the code 5 if you want to play it. I want to throw something at you, Jonathan, and just get your thoughts on this. This was going around Twitter. I don't know who tagged me with this, but I thought it was interesting. And the thought was that offensively, when it matters, the Heat are all one slot too far up. That Jimmy's not really a number one down the stretch. He's kind of a 2. Tyler's not really a 2 down the stretch. He's really a 3. I don't mean position 2 or 3. I mean in terms of what they should be on the pecking order of a contending team. And then Bam, we treat wanting him to be a top 3 guy down the stretch, and he's really a 4 in terms of that. And the thought was, well, maybe Oladipo changes that equation a little bit depending on his health, but that they don't really have a true 1, 2, 3 in that order. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Jimmy Butler, albeit his level of scoring, his shooting ability isn't what we want it to be all the times. And I feel like his late game just fading away for 3, I'm not really a big fan of those shots, to be honest with you. I think him taking it downhill, getting to the rim is a lot better shot for him. I think if you had somebody like, not to just be throwing it out there, but if you had like a Damian Lillard, a Bradley Beal, a go-to bucket who is going to for sure get you a bucket that can get you a hard shot and a tough bucket, that's more like your number one. But this team isn't really built like that. We're not built like a big 3 team. Sure, we have 3 really good players. I mean, 4 if you include Tyler, right? And Kyle, Bam, Jimmy, and Hero. But this team is built more like a team that has a lot of depth, right? This team is more like the 04 Pistons or 03 Pistons, whichever one it was, that just had a lot of players. And, what this team is really going to be focused on is how is the supporting cast going to help support Jimmy and Bam? So I think that's a fair thought. We don't have a big 3 in this team. We have a lot of good players and a really, really good supporting cast. And on top of that, the best coach in the league.
I just want to say one quick thing, that when you're talking about them being built around the supporting cast, I think that's the big thing. If they actually have to utilize the supporting cast late in games, like if that's your base, I think they treat Jimmy like the 1 and they treat Tyler like the 2 too often, that they kind of get away from that. Something I asked Jimmy about after the game was their offense looked like its best late in the game when they were running driving kicks, and Bam was sending hammer screens for Gabe Vincent 3s, and Max Strus got them going. Like, that's where I kind of have a problem with that. I think if you're going to go and say that you don't have a true number 1 to close a game out, I think you have to rely on the supporting cast late in games and trust those shots.
I will say, Brady, I can guarantee this. I don't think Jimmy has ever been asked by a beat writer before about hammer screens. That's just a hunch there. But Greg, to the point that Jonathan's making, they're built around their depth, but their salary structure is not.
Correct.
I mean, they are built.
They lucked into it, kind of.
Right. I mean, they're built like a big three team from a
Right.
salary structure perspective, right? With Duncan kind of in the middle and Tyler, eventually going to get there. So it feels a little bit accidental in that sense, right? I mean, I don't think that they intended to be built with depth. I mean, they wanted to build up these players as much as they possibly could, but
Listen.
the salary structure dictates that Jimmy, Bam, and when he's around, Kyle, and now I guess Tyler have to do a lot of that stuff, right?
I remember a Heat official you spoke to when you talked about players like Duncan. He was in the midst of a struggle. And I think that he said to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, something to the effect of, we know every single year there's going to be certain guys who overplay the value of their contract and underplay their value of their contract. And that just shakes out how it shakes out. They've really benefited from that this year more than ever. They are top heavy. And I think that in the playoffs, that's going to become much more magnified than in a game on January 31st. Like, that's when these guys are going to have their feet to the fire and be held accountable. Bam Adebayo, my favorite player who I defend to a fault, included. Jimmy included. Kyle and his salary included. And even Tyler Hero, who's not in the top 4 in payroll. I think that this is going to be big for him as well. So, it's amazing what they've been able to do. It's why a game like tonight, when they shift focus and probably shoot 45 3-point shots from deep to just switch up the game plan with no Jimmy, no PJ, they have a chance in these games because of these role guys. But come playoff time, it's the high salary guys we're going to be watching.
And before we go to picks here, a couple of comments came in I thought were interesting. One, the idea it's tougher to rely on role players down the stretch in the playoffs. And that is true. The role players, typically are successful based on the mismatches that are created by the stars. And so, and obviously in the playoffs, the stars are going to get more minutes. That's the way that this works because the stars on the other team are getting more minutes. You can't play Jimmy and Kyle 32 to 35 when Giannis and Middleton and Holiday are playing 40. Okay. You're going to have to do that, which means that those guys are going to have to step up. And that to me is one of the concerns, which is why I do want to see something from Bam tonight. I want to see him look around and say it's on me, which he has done at times. He did it recently. I think not just the pick and roll with Tyler, but the DHO. I do think with Duncan is going to get spammed a lot, and it's going to force Bam to be active in this game. All right, let's get to the picks though. Boston's been a weird team this year. They're still hovering around 500. Doesn't feel like they got things quite right. Brown and Tatum are really skilled. We know that. But it doesn't seem like they connect all that well. Smart's kind of on the trading block. Ricky tonight, let's make it simple. Do the Heat win?
No.
Okay. I don't think so either. Jonathan?
Yeah, I think there's a path there. I think with a healthy Tyler Hero and a Bam Adebayo, I think we've always been able to spread it around. I think Max Strus has a good game. I think Gabe Vincent has a good game. And I think we spam the hell, like I said, the dribble handoffs, the pick and rolls. But we're going to have a lot of assists tonight. I think tonight's a night where everybody plays for each other, and we end up hitting 16, 17 threes, and I think we get the win.
It has to be the Philadelphia formula, right, Brady? I mean, we were here for that game at Quarterdeck, and I welcome anybody to come out, bring a sweater. I would recommend, even with the heaters out here. I probably should have done that. I would just say it has to be the formula that you saw with Vincent and some of those other guys and the way they played against the Sixers.
Yeah, usually I would lean towards them losing, but I more, look at who they have and what they can run. I feel like there is a pathway, as Jonathan was saying. I feel like the big thing, as he mentioned, they're going to shoot a ton of threes. Like, they're going to get shots up, and I think if they shoot well, they win. If they don't, they lose. I think that's pretty simple. But as you both mentioned, I think the biggest thing is I didn't like the matchup for Duncan with Toronto, but I do like it in this one, and he always kind of plays well against Boston anyway. I think this is a game where Bam and Duncan both have good games. I think they can work well off each other in this type of matchup. And I think, like I said before, I think this is a really big when I say a big Bam game, I don't mean scoring-wise, as you guys are pointing out, kind of going. I think this is just an impact game where he maybe has 12 assists in this type of game, and I think they come up big. And I think this is a close game, though, down the stretch.
All right, again, play that thing at Prize Picks. Greg, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, so Prize Picks, Bam Adebayo, points, rebounds, assist. This is leaning into what Brady's talking about, 30.5. I would go over there. I think that he'll get a mix of all those things just by virtue of how much they're going to need him to do those things tonight specifically. I also think that it's really important that Gabe and Caleb Martin stay out of foul trouble so that they have all of the defensive horses in this game. That's one big thing. And I'm predicting, because, I'm not as good at this as Brady is, but I'm predicting that we get a big Max Strus night. That's the guy who they're going to be looking at. And
Well,
I'm picking the Heat to win. Moving on.
It's been a little while since we've seen that. All right,
That's
thanks to everybody here. Check out the sponsors, markbrownpa.com, Biscayne Bay Brewing, PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5. Check out the Hamarican Boys that posted today. Alana was on there, so that was a fun show today. Pace and Space at halftime. Post up 5R as soon as the game ends. And Greg will be hosting tonight on 5 on the floor. I might make an appearance. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe. I brought the equipment just in case. Thanks to Alejandro. He will take it from here. Have a good night, everybody. Quarterdeck, Davey, University Drive. Come hang out. I'm buying the first round.
Let's go Heat.
All right, let's get there. Ethan's buying the first round. All right, let's go and listen to Eric Spoelstra's press conference.
Great depth in our team, and we've been able to utilize it all season long.
So have you recovered from the triple overtime? Is that something you can get over?
It's kind of a trick question. I'm a head coach, so we tend to beat ourselves up quite a bit. I'm totally fine right now. Look, this is, I'm also can remove myself from that and just be grateful for that whole experience. I think it's really important for our team. I would have certainly loved to have been on the other side of it. And we had, 5 or 6 opportunities in the game, to probably really take control of it. They probably felt the same way, but they came out with a win. I believe that we even talked about it this morning. You can be disappointed, you can be frustrated, you can lose sleep over it like a head coach would. But also the other side of it, you can really be grateful for those experiences. I've never been part of a triple overtime. I think it was, the best basketball game, of the year. It's super competitive, a lot of compelling, things. And, I think we'll also learn from that as well.
Is there a certain play that just runs through your mind?
I'm not going to go through the autopsy. There's more than one. But coaches are masochistic, so that's the life we love. Anything else in here? Maddox, go ahead. No, Maddox. I thought we covered this. And
I'm sorry, Cooper
definitely not.
Go ahead, Cooper.
Hey, Spo.
Great. Just text me after. I'm not giving you anything right now.
Speaking of those overtimes, Toronto was calling Tyler's number pretty often, but the team defense, at least by the numbers, held up really well in those overtimes. Curious, as over the last 3 years, since this is nothing new for Tyler, has he gotten better at handling those situations?
Yeah, you're either going to do something about it, or just continue to get called up. I think those are kind of old scouting reports anyway. And we've really adapted, as a team. Tyler's really worked at it, to be a complete basketball player, be a two-way player, but also, to be an offensive threat that can make the right play at any given time, whether that's scoring at any 3 levels or playmaking. And he's just continuing to get better.
Appreciate it.
All right, up next we have Anthony Chiang, Miami Herald. Go ahead.
Hey, Spo. I know Bam and Jimmy have missed a chunk of games, but you guys have also won a lot as well. I guess, how do you kind of view their all-star candidacy of guys like Bam, Jimmy, Tyler, Kyle, with coaches, having to submit votes here this week?
I should probably, this is probably one of the weaknesses I have as a head coach. I need to pay more attention to that. I have a hunch about our veteran players. They probably feel the same way as their head coach about, the all-star experience, this year. I would love to see Bam as an all-star. I don't know how that works out, whether he's had enough games, but he's the heart and soul of what we do. And I really would like to see Tyler Hero become an all-star. I think he's had an all-star year, and I think it would be great just for the narrative that you can still accomplish individual things if your team is successful, and even if you're coming off the bench. There's a lot of strong opinions and narratives out there that you have to be XYZ to be considered a great player, and I just think it's a bunch of BS. It's about impacting winning. and Tyler's been able to do that. And then, we view him as our sixth starter anyway, but I get it how everybody else views it.
Thanks, Coach. We're good here.
Thank you.
He's going to test it out shortly and see how the soreness is in his Achilles and with the expectation to play, but got to go out and try it out first.
Is that just an overuse thing, or is it something that happened?
Something that happened in the game recently, but he's had some soreness at times. He's a guy that plays through pretty much everything. So we've seen this before where he has to just test it out. He felt okay at shoot around and wants to see the pregame.
Mm-hmm. And Romeo, I know he was listed as available, but
yeah,
what was going on with that? You said an Achilles.
Yeah, had some soreness as well, and didn't play in the first half. And then when he came in the second, just seemed like it flared up pretty quickly. So had that few minute stint where honestly planned on playing him for a run there, and either didn't get sore or tightened up pretty quickly. So was out in the New Orleans game. Had to test it out as well. Same thing.
And we always have these conversations about they've got a bunch of guys out. You guys have this, these tendencies. What's the story for today as far as jumping on a Miami team that's shorthanded?
Yeah, they'll attack you in a different way. What they lose with Butler and Tucker and some guys, toughness and obviously experiences, they'll gain in other areas with shooting, with Vincent, Strus, Robinson as well, obviously. So they'll attack you in a different way. Still have a great deal of shooting on that team. Hero coming off the bench, and what they do is what they do regardless of who's in or out for them. And so can't obviously relax. We've been in this situation all year, and sometimes came out, took care of business, at times struggled against a Milwaukee team that was depleted and go to overtime. So our thing is being consistent. What we've done over the last few games defensively and offensively, trying to play with the pace and taking care of the ball like we have. And that's a good winning formula for us.
Hey, Coach, what's going on?
How you doing, man?
Crowdy, how you been?
Good, man.
Just wanted to follow up on that. So, 3 of the last 4 wins for you. What do you feel like you're doing in a positive way that's trending right now? That's made a difference over that time frame.
Yeah, starting with defense, we defend up to our standard, up to the level we have, which is top 5. Holding teams in that low, sometimes 70s, 80s, obviously is impressive. But anytime we can hold somebody under 100, we feel good about ourselves. Keep them in the 90s. Offensively, we've been playing with more pace, and look at last game against New Orleans versus the Atlanta game, where felt like we didn't play as fast. The ball was sticking a little bit more, 15 assists versus 31, and obviously when shots are falling, that helps. But playing with the pace, take care of the ball, turnovers low, assists high. It's that simple.
Great. And just as a follow up, looks like Marcus Smart doing a little bit more, ball handling and maybe shot creating for you as a playmaker as well, screening and some of the dribble handoff actions. Is that something that's happened organically, or something that you're kind of pressing him to do more often?
Yeah, well, we've stressed that to everybody this year. Obviously, he was out for, I think, a 4-game stretch and been back for the last 4 or 5, and has really done an excellent job playing some of his best basketball as far as that. But, something that he's going to do in the point guard position. But, we've been stressing that all year with Jason, Jalen, those guys improving in that area, and he just falls in the same category. But he's been doing an excellent job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your All-Star voting process is like what kind of things you factor in, whether it be records, the way guys playing, how they play against you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, record is a huge part of it, in my opinion. You look at some numbers, and everybody has a different opinion on what they value. Some guys are scoring high numbers on teams that aren't winning, versus you look at a team like Chicago or Cleveland that's kind of came out of nowhere, and what the guys have done to impact that. So I really value the winning aspect, and because across the board, someone may be at 29 but not winning versus 25, 26 with some other guys like a Chicago with Levine and DeRozan, and what those guys have done to impact and change the course of the season for those guys. So I value the winning for sure, but at the same time, you can't deny and take away from a guy that's really scoring or doing some exceptional things on a poor team.
What do you think about Jason and Jalen's candidacy and the possibility of them making it?
Well, I mean, guys have been in and out all year for a lot of teams, and so I don't think that should be held against a guy like Jalen who has missed some when he's come back, and lately, especially with those two, I think they've been playing extremely well together. And it's a short sample size, but us being 4-0 when they both scored 30, and so you see how they impact the game, obviously. And so I think teams know that we played against the value that they bring to our team, just like we know again as coaches, the guys we're playing against, and so. Two guys that are pretty consistent on a night-to-night basis, one of the top 10 in the league, and they're flirting around that 50 number of what they average between each other. And I think that we go where they go, and when we're good, when they're really good together, we're undefeated.
Wrap it up right there. Okay, thank you, Coach. Thank you, folks.
Advertise your business in a cost-effective
as well. So make sure you like, you subscribe. We just went over 16,000 subscribers this weekend, so we thank you. 5reasonsports.com. Make sure you spell that one out. The latest takeaways from Brady Hawk and the latest pieces from around the network. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of Dolphins coverage this week if they decide to hire a coach or two coaches. Maybe they'll do co-coaches this year. Who knows? Check it out on 5reasonsports.com. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. If you need IT, we always tell you to go to TJ. Okay, real simple. IT, go to TJ. CPT of South Florida. I know that's a lot of initials we've got here, but CPT of South Florida is where you want to go if you need cloud-hosted phone systems or managed IT. They also can help you with security. I don't mention this too much, but that might be the most important thing that they do. All right. If you have security issues, your company's getting bigger, you're using a lot of IT, but you're worried that somebody's going to be hacking into that thing, reach out to CPT of South Florida. TJ, big Miami sports fan. Phone number is 954-966-2766. That's 954-966-2766. And he's still got this deal going on, this promotion, 25% off cloud phone service, including free phones and the first 2 months of service free. So deal with an owner, not a sales rep. Give TJ a call at CPT. Again, that's 954-966-2766 or cpt-florida.com. And now, tonight's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dog. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all bang. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Ethan Skolnick back on 5 on the Floor. Here's tonight's floor plan. Got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. And I've got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Alex survived the 3 overtime game there the other night. With Brady. The Heat, of course, lose to the Raptors. They lose on the second night of a back-to-back, which we told you has been a problem. They're now 2-6 on the season in the second night of back-to-back. So they got a back-to-back coming up now, challenging one in Boston and Toronto. They do not have Kyle Lowry for the first game of this trip. He's still out for personal reasons, as we've been telling you. And obviously, now the Jimmy Butler situation becomes a bit of an issue because he's now listed as questionable. We'll see if he plays with that troublesome ankle. But we're going to focus on one guy today who we know is going to play, but is not really playing to the level offensively that I think a lot of us projected or maybe hoped. And we just figured we need to deal with it at this point. He's been back now for a week and a half. He's been playing at a really high level defensively. I don't think that's the question, so we're not even going to cover that here. But we've been focusing on Bam Adebayo in terms of his aggression, right? That has been the whole thing. I gave this whole spiel a couple of weeks ago about what we wanted to see from him. And so, yeah, that has been a problem, okay? When you don't have shot attempts in 3 overtimes, that's an issue, okay? Particularly when we've seen how ball dominant Jimmy has been in those situations and how poorly Tyler shot in the 3 overtimes against Toronto. But it's not just the aggression, Greg, and that's what we're going to dive into here with Greg and Alex. The numbers are not great this year. The shooting numbers are not great. And there's also a couple of other numbers. I mean, just generally, the raw points per game number is down from 18.7 to 17.8.
His overall shooting, but I know you're going to break this down more specifically, is down from 57% to a career low 51%. That's what he shot as a rookie. His rebounds are up from last season, but again, we're focusing on the scoring here. And then you look at the playmaking, he's down. His assists are down from 5.4 to 3.6. We figured some of that would happen with Lowry, but the turnovers are up from 2.6 to 3.1. The turnovers shouldn't be going up when the assists are going down. His assist to turnover ratio has essentially gone from 2-to-1 to 1-to-1, which is a significant drop. Pat Riley said, I think you're going to see a pure scorer this year. That's the expectation that he set for Bam. Have we seen a pure scorer this year?
Pure scorer? No, I don't think that we can in good conscience say that. I think that he is, it's funny, as we started to talk about that we were going to address this Bam Adebayo offense topic, and I dug into the shooting numbers as you referenced. It's really crazy when you see it year over year, the stark difference. And it almost looks as if he's, you could categorize it in a bit of a slump, but we wouldn't have talked about Bam Adebayo being in a shooting slump. But just to give this some context, from less than 5 feet, Bam Adebayo shooting 68% this year. Last year, he was at 75%. Shots from 5 to 9 feet, he's shooting 31.5% this year. Last year, he shot 48%. And shots from 10 to 14 feet, he's at 35% this season versus 47% last season. Basically on the same volume in all of those tiers, slightly weighted towards the less than 5 feet. He's getting 6 attempts a game this year. So that's the thing that's a little concerning, is that he also is not necessarily taking a ton of shots from the 5 to 9 foot range. And you would think that would be his comfort zone. And for some reason that he hasn't found some consistent rhythm or touch around that area. And he finds himself in that area so often. So to me, that's the kind of stuff that's concerning. I don't want to make too much of this because, and we'll probably get into the reasons why maybe this stuff has happened later, but the raw numbers tell us that this is more than just Bam not being aggressive. He's also not being efficient.
I think these two things are connected, Alex. I think the lack of efficiency may be leading to his lack of aggression, because I think there's a lack of confidence. And often we do see that those two things are tied together. But before we get to the reasons, again, the specific lack of aggression, let's just get into why he's not shooting as well. Do you see, is there something wrong from what you're seeing with his form? Is it maybe where he's getting the touches? How do you, it's a significant drop. He's come down a lot from where he was last year. And at this point, we can't really, I know his knee was bugging him, but I don't think it is now. What do you think it is?
I definitely don't think it's the stroke is bad, because aesthetically, visually, it looks exactly as it ever has. And I think we've all kind of appreciated as Heat observers the fact that it's always been there. It's always looked good, and he's always been a good free throw shooter. So all of that has kind of tracked throughout the years. And I think it's less to do with his actual jump shot and the way it's being used, right? I think we came into the season expecting for Bam to be a much more efficient scorer, to have everything kind of put for him on a plate. And obviously there's been guys in and out. It's not like he's been able to play with Lowry and the team how it's supposed to be built the whole season. And we saw flashes of what we wanted to see when the team was healthy. Bam was getting a whole lot of attempts rolling to the rim, and that's a lot of the stuff that you want, right? And a lot less of him having to create for other guys. So although his usage is almost identical to what it was last season, his true shooting percentage is way down. Like you mentioned, the assist to turnover stuff is just not as good as it was. His assist percentage is way down. He's still getting to the free throw line, right? He gets the free throw line 6 times as opposed to Jimmy's 8. So he's giving you value there. But as an actual pure scorer, like what Riley said, I think they made a mistake putting that pressure on him, because it's clear not only that he's not there, but also that the organization, at least Spo and the coaching staff, doesn't think he's there, because they don't use him in that way. They don't use him as somebody who is this pure scoring talent. And look, I went to go make sure by looking at the actual shot attempts per game before this pod, and he's third on the team in shot attempts per game.
Look at Tyler.
Yeah, no, Tyler is way ahead. Tyler's 2.5 shots ahead of Jimmy per game. We know the context. There was a lot of time where it was the Kyle and Tyler show. There's a lot of noise there, but Bam being at 13 field goal attempts a game is a little low for me when you look at Jimmy's 15 and Tyler's 17.5 or whatever it was. And like, we thought of him as somebody who could be a comparable scoring talent to these guys, and that's not really the way he's being used. It feels like when he's taking these jumpers that still look good aesthetically, it's almost like the last option in the play. And I feel like we've gone back towards some of that because that's what was going on during the last 2 seasons where they didn't have Lowry and they were kind of just running the show through Jimmy and Bam, where Jimmy's show is, getting to the line. Getting to the rim and making stuff happen, whether it's for him or for others, or getting to the free throw line. Whereas Bam's show is like creating for others, screening, getting that rim roll attempt, but it's not really like scoring for himself. And we talked about how they haven't really, run that playbook for him. And I just feel like now he's taking these shots that are kind of like, end of the shot clock, not in rhythm. He's not getting in rhythm as a scorer. They're not using him in that way.
But Alex, let me
got to figure out.
Let me stop you there. How much of that is him and how much of that is them? Because I do feel that part of the Riley comment was putting pressure on Spoelstra in addition to Bam. Because if you remember the previous Riley presser at the end of the season, and I asked him about whether certain guys have it or they don't in terms of being score, and if you could build that, and he went on this riff about Bam and how Eric maybe can use him differently. And then he follows up by saying, I think you're going to see a pure scorer this year. It feels like it was a challenge to both of them, to both Bam and to Spo. You talk about the shot attempts this year. I mean, they're basically the same.
0.5.
I mean, he's from 12.4 to 12.9. It's pretty much an irrelevant jump. I mean, it's pretty much the same as, his minutes.
All of the increase is coming right around the rim.
Right, exactly, and the minutes are basically the same as last year, so it's not that it's 33.5 versus 33.4.
And again, so is the usage, almost identical.
Right, so essentially, he is a carbon copy of what we saw last year. He's just less efficient.
I think in a different role is the biggest thing here. He's in clearly a different role.
But that's the thing; it's a different role. But the role was supposed to get bigger. Like that was the whole thing. Like I think there's really 2 things going on here. Okay, I think, and I think we need to break them down separately. And then after the break, I think that we need to go through each of these areas, his post game, his face up game, and we should touch on all of them. Okay. But I do think 2 different things are happening here where honestly, it has not met expectations. Okay. I just think we have to be clear on that. Offensively, defensively, he's tremendous. He's tremendous. He's top 3 in the league and he's probably not 2 or 3. Okay. But offensively, like a couple of things have. One, like you said, he's not being used in a way to really get him more looks. So that didn't happen. Like the Riley, I suppose done a tremendous job with many things as we've talked about, but that has not happened. Okay. And then the second thing is Bam has not really improved in the areas that would compel Eric to run more for him. Again, it's another chicken and the egg thing because he has been a less efficient in all of those spots. So it's really hard to justify going to him offensively when Jimmy may be getting to the line or Tyler may be going or some of these other guys who popped this year are playing well, right? I mean, I'll go to Greg on this first, and then after the break, Alex, I do want us to kind of go through all of the parts of his game. But who is it more at this point? Like why are we not seeing? Because Riley issued a challenge to both of them. I don't feel like in this particular area, either of them has really met it.
No, it's funny because there's often been times where Riley, I think, has envisioned certain guys in roles, and then just the way that the game is played, it ends up being more guard heavy, and you're seeing Tyler with more shot attempts because, you never know that leap's going to come in the way that it did. The thing for Bam that I think we should just keep in mind is that he started the season basically just rim running. Lowry was doing everything. In terms of facilitating and getting out on the break and all that fun stuff. Those first 7 games wasn't that fun. That feels like a forever ago, where the offense was just clicking. But Bam was not doing the stuff that Bam had done in prior years during that stretch. And I think that was probably, if we all was to conceptualize the offense looking its best, that was when it did. And then Lowry's out, Jimmy's out. So Bam has to shift his game. All of a sudden, he's starting to initiate offense. All of a sudden, his assists start to go up where, at the beginning of the year, he was barely getting any assists. So he's had to kind of shift roles throughout the year. I don't think it helps that his wrist has been hurt. Like that's something that is tied to offense and getting to the basket and feeling comfortable. So Those are just things that I think we need to take into account. I don't think that they are excuses. You know that Bam is my my boy, so I'm going to try to rep him every time I can. And you can't. The numbers don't lie. He's obviously not been as efficient, but there are factors that go into that.
There are factors, and again, I want to touch on more of them after the break. We're going to go through all of it, but I'm taking them at their own words. Bam said, "I'm going to shoot threes this year." He hasn't made a three, right? I'm just going through it. I mean, like we said, we take them at their own words on what sort of the ambition was this year. And as many things that have gone right through what are we at now? 51 games of the season. This is something, and I still believe this, to get to their final form. Okay. There need to be some Bam Adebayo takeover games. There are just games where he has on paper matchups that should be favorable. If they're going to win a championship, it doesn't have to be every game, but there has to be a quarter here. There has to be a game here where Bam can do it. And we've seen it on occasion this year, but I think maybe even less than we saw last year, which is not what we anticipated. All right, we're going to talk about this more as we go forward here, but we want to tell you the Miami Marathon's coming up next week. If you're a distance runner, you do endurance sports, whatever, maybe you want to be the next Rafael Nadal, right? You play a lot of tennis. You got to check out Get Solis, okay? It's actually called Solis, but you go to getsolis.com, GETSALIS.com. Use the code 5RSN. You'll get 10% off there. You get 10% off there, the supplements. And again, this is where you want to go if you want to replace your electrolytes, okay? You want to get back out there. You want to be able to perform longer. Go to getsolis.com. Replace your electrolytes in a healthy way, not just by pounding a bunch of Gatorade. Order it now, okay, to get it as quickly as you possibly can. So Monday, you hear this, go to getsolis.com and make your order. Use the code 5RSN for 10% off there. All right, let's go through it piece by piece here because, we talk about there are different levels you can score from, right, Alex? So we're just going to go one at a time. Has he made any improvement in his post game? Not that they go to that much, but has he made any improvement in his post game, in your opinion, Alex?
I mean, honestly, not enough. Like, I think there's still plenty of times where he gets somebody smaller than him and he will, like, I'll give him credit for recognizing the mismatch, right? But a lot of times, and this has been pointed out before, he's really looking to draw two and to kind of kick out from there and make the pass from there, make the right play. And I get that. But the problem is, just like with the dribble handoff stuff, if everybody knows you're going to go pass it, like, people are going to stop throwing two at you every time there's a mismatch. Like, it's going to happen less and less, especially when you go into the playoffs and some of the better defenses, like, let's say you go up against the Bucks. I'm sure after a couple of games of seeing some of Miami's actions, they're going to start to realize, like, yeah, Bam's not really going to try to take advantage of that. He's going to try to get the second guy to come so he can make the pass, but he's not really actually trying to score. And I think he can. Like, I think it's all on, like, him just backing down a small guy and giving him a nice basic post move. Like, he doesn't even need to learn an arsenal of post moves. When you got a smaller guy on you, it becomes a lot easier. Like, you just don't need to do as much. And I think that's why it's become like, no, don't run the ball through him in the post. But when he's got that mismatch, you got to take advantage. And this definitely applies towards the aggression stuff we've gone over the past couple of seasons. But like I said, just like with every other conversation with Bam, it's a coaching thing too. And you know me, none of us here are ripping on Spo, but this is kind of you refer to the chicken and egg stuff with Bam. I think this is kind of the theme here because it's like, well, if he's really that guy, why aren't they empowering him in that way? Because we've seen them empower their guys, their foundational players, like Tyler Hero, the past couple of seasons before he turned and before he took this leap that he has. They've kind of put him in those positions where it's like, okay, these are the best spots for him to turn into the player that we envision him to become. And the Heat haven't really put Bam in that process. Like, they've looked at him as a scorer. I get he's third in attempts, so it's not like, he's near the bottom of the rotation in attempts or anything. It's not crazy. Like, it's not crazy low, his attempts. I just think it's like there's plenty of opportunities throughout a game. You're trying to get openings on a defense, and when you get a small guy on you, that's one right there. And it's kind of like, why isn't that being taken advantage of more?
There's a part of this, I can't help but say it, that you feel like Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler for either one of those guys, not Jimmy. Jimmy's doing what Jimmy does. I mean, he's at the height of his powers, but for Bam, they kind of use the same spaces of the floor, the same quadrants of the floor, we'll say. And so I think that's an interesting dynamic in terms of maximizing Bam. Defensively, we're seeing that all of this stuff is being maximized, but when you look at him shooting 68% from less than 5 feet, just to give you guys perspective, and he shot 75% last year. DeAndre Ayton is at 75, Gobert 74, Jimmy Butler's at 64.5, Domas Sabonis 72%. So like essentially Bam Adebayo of last year was finishing better than all of these guys, in the post and around the rim. And this year it's just kind of been less than that. And so to me, you can't say that he has made strides, I think, around the rim and in the post.
All right, we're going to move out a little bit further here because I know you have some of these numbers, the post stuff, but it gets worse as you kind of get into this mid-range area compared to last year. So we're going to talk about that next. Before we do, we got a watch party Monday night at Quarterdeck. This is the one in Davie, the one on University Drive. We've been out there before. You might want to bring a sweater. Sometimes we hang out outside. Okay, we got a really nice spot out there, but it's Heat Celtics. 7:30. We'll be out there starting at 7. I got a bunch of 5 Reasons hats. I'm going to be giving them out to the first 4 people who show up to the watch party who are not with the network. Okay, so come out to Quarterdeck over at, again, it's on University Drive in Davie. You know about the place. They got obviously great wings. We get the buffalo shrimp out there for everybody. And we have some drink specials going on there as well. And of course, they got a full bar with all the beer that you could possibly want. And actually, they serve Biscayne Bay Brew, the official beer of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. So come out to Quarterdeck. This is tomorrow or Monday, as you're listening to this, for Heat Celtics. We'll be out there starting at about 7 o'clock. All right, let's go out a little bit further here. Greg, you touched on these numbers, and I'm going to go to Alex on it, though. We talk about empowering him, but again, the ball's got to go in, right? If he's going to be empowered more. I know you said his form looks fine, but sometimes it feels to me like it's not just that he's the last option on offense, it's that he views himself as the last option on offense. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of taking those shots in the mid-range area as sort of like, okay, excuse me, nobody else really did anything here, so I'll turn and shoot. And it doesn't always feel to me like it's in rhythm like it could be. Do you see that?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It was kind of what I was alluding to a little bit in the beginning of the show when we were talking about the mid-range stuff. Just like the shot looks good. I just wish that he would actually look to get the shot off before the end of the buzzer when he's starting. When the shot clock is starting to go down and he's feeling the pressure, right? I just think he has that confidence in his shot. I do believe that. And right back to that theme of chicken and egg, like if he's not taking that shot, because I know he knows that he has that shot. The 3 is a whole other conversation, but like it's happened before. He's gotten better in that every single season except this season. Like we talked about in the chat, it's kind of plateaued. And I'm looking at his mid-range stuff right now on dunksandthrees.com. The mid-range percentage went down by 10 from last season, just the way that they categorize it.
That's staggering. That's just crazy.
It's a huge dip. So I do think if he were to get some better looks, better in rhythm looks, for sure, that number will go up. A lot of this has to do with Lowry because like we said, like we saw some of those flashes, right, where Lowry would get him the ball back in times where like, okay, no, you don't need to be giving it up. So part of the stuff we're talking about with the post mismatches and here with the jump shots, it's like Kyle Lowry is very good at being that floor general and putting Bam in those positions. Now, it didn't happen as much as we wanted. Like Leif was talking about, it was a lot of rim rolling stuff. And I think that's part of the conversation too, is like, I think Spo thinks that the offense runs better when they're playing sort of at that pace and it's less of the Jimmy Bam show trying to create from the elbows. Because I just don't think he looks at Bam in that same level. Because obviously Jimmy has proven it for years and years of being an all-star scorer, whereas Bam is kind of on that process to becoming that. And I think that has never been more obvious in this season, where we came into the season thinking that Bam could kind of close that gap a little bit between them as scorers from the elbow, but he's just not there yet. They're not, besides the fact that they're not really running those sets, like he doesn't look to do it himself. So I don't know. The whole thing is like he needs to take more open in rhythm shots. I don't think it's a thing where they need to run the ball through him, run the offense through him, and put him as the number one scorer. I just don't think that's something that's going to happen overnight. Like, he needs to develop into that. But the fact that it's going backwards is not the sign you want. So I'm just hoping that when the team is healthier again, they go back to taking better shots, and hopefully that gets Bam a little bit more confident in rhythm to take those better shots instead of waiting till the end of the shot clock.
Greg, I got a couple of philosophical questions for you here. Well, first, before I get to that, to me, one of the more frustrating things about watching this, because we know how skilled Bam is and how hard he works, I mean, these are all positives, is that it seems to me sometimes like PJ Tucker is more aggressive and more confident in his offensive ability than Bam Adebayo is. And that just should not be the case. I mean, when they run offense through PJ, he's looking to make plays at times even for himself, which is not something we thought he would do this year. And Bam hasn't. That has jumped out to me. But here's the other thing. It seems to me like a lot of what we're talking about with this plateauing, which is not what we expected, sounds similar to some of the conversations we had about Tyler in his second year, as compared to his first, that really he didn't get worse, but he didn't get better. Like in the ways that he got better in some subtle ways. Okay. But not the ways that necessarily translated to the stat sheet. Right. And so, I don't want to overreact to a lot of this. Bam's not having a bad year.
Yeah.
But
because defensively, he's like doing masterclass stuff every night. Yeah. And you acknowledge that, of course.
We could do a totally separate podcast on Bam Adebayo and his greatness defensively. And I think we touch on that pretty much every night. Okay. When they play, I mean, nobody is questioning that. All right. Bam. And I've never questioned whether he's worth a max contract, because what he provides to this team is worth that. What I'm questioning again, and I want to get to the hero thing, but what I'm questioning again is whether this team can win a championship if Bam is just going to be this, which is an elite defensive player who's kind of a third or fourth and sometimes makes himself a fifth option offensively and doesn't, and more strikingly, the fourth quarter. I mean, that's been the big thing here. Like, they've struggled down the stretch of games. It looks like they need something else. Okay. Now maybe it's Kyle's return, but this idea of like Jimmy just being completely ball dominant down the end of games, or when Tyler plays, and Tyler's off, like he was against Toronto and having to keep going to him, it would be nice to have, your max guy who has a lot of skills as at the very least a relief option. And he hasn't been that. So that's a lot of stuff there, but I guess, so let's start here. The fact that sometimes PJ looks more comfortable in that role than Bam does what for you? I mean, is that good on PJ, or does that speak to, or am I overreacting to that?
No, I don't think you're overreacting. I think PJ is just as excited and as confident as he's ever been in his entire life, and Bam is not that. So it could just look that way. I mean, I think the field goal attempts speak for themselves ultimately, that Bam's still getting his, but there's something to be said for the confidence factor here. And, when you have a guy like Bam, who's clearly the face of the franchise go forward, or that's how they've positioned him, you want to continue to see the growth year over year. But I think Hero and what you mentioned earlier, it's really informative, like that maybe sometimes you have to take a step back to take two steps forward, etc. And I know that that's cliche to say, but, I think if you asked Eric Spoelstra, he would say there's so many other things that he does that he's covering for, that scoring is all such a bonus. But to your point, Pat did not frame it that way. So, we're looking at this, totally differently.
All right. I got one more thing here for both of you guys after the break. It's in this vein, so we'll get to in a second. We do want to tell you about one more sponsor. We appreciate them letting us hang out there the other night. We had a good time over at City Cigar Lounge. It's right down the street from the arena. This should be your pre and post game spot. Seriously, it's a great place to go. They got a great little food menu there. I partook in a lot of it before I went out to the game. Or get yourself a cigar. They got more than 350 different types of liquor there as well. They run happy hour specials. It's just a great spot. It's called City Cigar Lounge. It's literally down the street from the arena. A thing that I didn't know about until I got down there the other day. You can park there in their garage and take a shuttle to the arena, which is pretty damn cool. You get a discount there on the shuttle. So check out City Cigar Lounge. Again, that's right in downtown Miami. You're going to find us there on a lot of nights. We're going to be running events there as well. That's going to kind of become our Dade County headquarters, and we're going to do some stuff during their road games. So check it out, City Cigar Lounge. And when you go, mention 5 Reasons. Real comfortable place with a ton of TVs, and it's a great spot to watch a game, honestly. All right. Let's go forward here, because there's the idea of, can they win a championship this year if you just have Bam as what he's done? 17-point scorer, 13 attempts a game, maybe 1 or 2 in the fourth, right? And you hope that sort of his shooting progresses back to the mean, right? Like, so there's that. But you mentioned it, Greg. So I'll start with you and then we'll close with Alex. I mean, he's a face of the franchise going forward. Like, I mean, Jimmy and Kyle are, they're not on borrowed time, but we kind of know what the endpoints are going to be for both of them. Tyler, we assume, is going to be here, but there's still the chance that he could be flipped in a trade for another big fish if Pat decides that they don't have enough and somebody asks out. We know the players we talk about, the Lillards, the Beals, etc. But Bam's going to be here. Like, they're not flipping Bam for something else. Like, he's going to be a face of the franchise going forward. So are there, I guess, would there be a concern if one of your faces of your franchise is not a guy who's going to be aggressive offensively, particularly down the last, when it matters, right? The last, crunch time, the last 5 minutes of games, he may dominate defensively. He may take teams totally out of their offense. He's done that great this year. But you want to get a little bit more on the offensive end. Does it concern you with him as one of the pillars if this is what it is? If it's really good, but it's not. I mean, let's just be honest. It's not elite offensively.
Yeah, no. If this is what it is, then that's not enough. But I just think he's too young, and there's too much more for him to grow into. Trust me, like, I'm not trying to be naive. When you have a guy, when you see like what Dwayne did offensively early on, and comparing Bam to Dwayne is not necessarily fair, but just to give a visual, like, you just knew that Dwayne could just take over and that he had that in him. And Bam may never be that type of player in terms of the way that he approaches his offense, but I just don't think personally, I don't think that this is a plateau where he will not get any better go forward. I don't see that. I think that there's other things. I just, truthfully, if we're being honest, he's never had a season where they've said, listen, your primary role is to play good defense and score the hell out of the basketball. That's just not what they've asked him to do. We can act like that's what they've asked him to do, but that's not truthfully what he is being put on the court to do. And maybe if he had a season like that, we would see a different mentality, but that's not going to be till a few years from now, because this is Jimmy Butler's show for now.
What do you think, Alex?
Bam right now, and I agree with Leif that he's going to keep getting better. I think this season you're talking about trying to sneak in and win a championship. We all think that they're good enough to compete with any of the best teams, and I'm still there. I think the premise that the Heat are only championship good if Bam took a leap as a scorer is a little unfair, because I just don't believe that to be true based on what we've actually seen. Like, they're just a really, really, really good team the way they are. Obviously, we've seen them healthy, not healthy, and they're still beating up on teams. They're clearly better in the regular season than they have been in the past 2 seasons. So I think that's not even to be debated with. And the playoff stuff is obviously based on faith that some of this stuff will come through. And I think coming into the season, we all knew that this team was built for the playoffs, right? Some of the stuff has changed when you look at the depth, and it's like, okay, they're more built for the regular season than we thought, when you have all these guys contributing and even more kind of waiting to contribute than we could have possibly imagined, at least in the current moment. And so projecting towards the playoffs, I think what Bam is right now, projecting that he gets a little better with the mid-range stuff. And, I think once the team is healthy and finds a little bit of their stride there, I think it's going to become a little bit more comfortable for Bam, figuring out where he fits in as a scorer. I think it's enough. I think they do have enough to win a title this year. And that's why I want to make sure that the expectations are where they're supposed to be, because the team that they've showed themselves to be this season is a contender. Now, maybe they haven't been the best or second best team in the league, but they're right up there. And I think Bam is going to be a matchup thing, just like many other times that we've talked about the playoffs with this team. I think, like, you go up against the Bulls, it might be a really nice matchup for him with how small they are. The fact that, they pretty much only got Vucevic as their big man, and outside of that, they go very small, and they've got a lot of holes they can pick at. And we kind of saw something similar in that Boston series where he went off. I think a Brooklyn series would be a great one for Bam, because he always goes off against them. We know that, but another team that kind of plays a little bit smaller, right? And I think just doesn't have as many guys that they could actually throw at Bam there. So I think there's potential for Bam to look like a better scorer than what he's shown in the regular season, just like he did in that series versus the Celtics. But it's a matchup thing. Like, I don't think he would look like a great scorer versus the Bucks with or without Brook Lopez. Like, they're just a lot more suited to deal with Bam's athleticism and length and everything that he can throw at them. So I just think what they have is enough. It's going to be a matchup game in the playoffs, and Bam just needs to kind of polish up and find the balance there as an offensive player and figuring out, like, how often am I going to be going for that rim roll? How often am I going to be actually looking to create something out of the face up? And I haven't even touched on this, not just look for the jump shot every time, because like I said, we know he's confident in that jump shot, and he waits till too long a lot of times to do it. But sometimes it's like he's only looking for that jump shot. And it's like, dude, we know you have a really tight handle for a big. We know you got moves that you've thrown out there in transition, you've thrown out there in semi-transition, hezzies. Now, doing that in a half-court offense where everything is a lot more tight, I get it. You can't just do it every time, but those moves need to be thrown out there more. He hit that one bank shot in transition last night versus the Raptors that was kind of similar. It just came out of nowhere, but it was a strong move to the basket, and he finished. It's like, wow, I wish he would do that more often.
All right. Thank you for joining us for the pregame show here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Remember, as soon as the game's over, come over here to the YouTube channel. We're going to be doing the post up. If not, you can join us before that at halftime, Pace and Spaces, with our friends Marco, Sean, and Tony, who are going to be hosting that halftime show on Twitter. So go to Twitter as soon as the second half is over. If you're in Davie, you can go over to Quarterdeck. Ethan Skolnick's going to be there with some of the 5 Reasons crew guys, and they're going to be enjoying the game. The Miami Heat facing the Celtics, who should be live right now. Have a good night. Enjoy the game, and we will see you later tonight here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel.